Today is a massive day for the Terra Luna Classic ecosystem. Let's talk about what just happened and what this means for the next 3 months of Terra Luna Classic. Today we had a funding proposal passed to fund the new L1 dev team, mainly containing notable members such as Ed Kim and Zaradar. Let's talk about how this went and what this means for the future. As you can see right behind me, we had this proposal passed with almost 95% yes, less than 1% no, and 4% abstain. This is one of the highest passing rates on a proposal that we have seen in a long time. The only real no here came from Terra Vita and then this Moontrain Express, but as you can see, Moontrain Express voting power is basically nothing. I do want to show you, you guys can go to burnandbuild.org/resources, click on this data tab, it'll take you over here, on-chain data, nice little pop out, and if we go to the community pool, we'll be able to see right here that the money has already been sent over for this new L1 dev team. You can see that right behind me here. The community pool balance dropping down dramatically as that 900 million Terra Luna Classic ended up getting paid out. If you also want to confirm for any spending proposal that's been paid out, you can click here on the recipient, and then you can see that the money has been in fact sent over to this wallet address. This proposal was put up by Ed Kim on Agora, and there's a few details that go beyond just what's in here. I know you've probably seen quite a few other people already talk about it, but I want to go on to some details that go above and beyond what this says, some new information that has come out. So for example, with Tobias or Zaradar, we learned that his monthly work, he's going to be putting in 40 hours per week. For Ed's going to be putting in 20 to 30 hours per week. For Till, or Frag as he's commonly known, not entirely sure on those hours. And under Notional Labs, we have one primary person, but it sounds like there's a couple other people on their team that are also going to be contributing some time to this. So we're getting one full-time person plus some other people who are willing to toss in some time and do some effort there. Now, Zaradar actually put out a post here today showing some work that they've already been doing, which is kind of crazy. They were already starting to do work before this proposal even passed, which I think is amazing and goes to show just the level of commitment that this team has to our ecosystem and to us as a community. So the first thing that did was merge a pull request to connect their classic repo. They also merged a pull request with the initial burn tax split. This is something that they've been working on. I'll cover this in another video most likely, but essentially it's breaking down that burn tax. So anybody who does an optional or a voluntary burn transfer would not be taxed, but the tax from the transaction, that 0.2% tax, that's on every transaction on chain, the amount of that gets burned would still be at a 50-50 of 50% going to fund the community pool. They also created a backlog project with issues in their classic repo centered around the 1168 criteria. And again, this is this proposal right here, and that would be those different bullet points that they outlined within this of their different objectives over the next 3 months. So that takes off right off the bat here, this first aspect of their to-do list for January. And then as we go forward, they are establishing the oversight committee right now. And I believe they're supposed to have their first meeting on Thursday. This refactoring or redoing the burn tax, that's what's bullet pointed right here. Redoing that burn tax, the burn and community pool proportions, and reworking that whole software. And there's a couple other things that we can expect to see up in this month. We have 3 bullet points right here. We're assessing 2 different things and working on something. I don't really expect there to be deliverables on these, but this is just to let us know kind of what's going on in the background. This is more of establishing baselines, establishing where we're at currently, seeing if we could work out some solutions for a problem here on maintaining a fallback strategy if the version map cannot be patched, some things like that. Now, a question that was brought up to Zaradar, and I don't really know if this is good or bad, but a lot of these points shown in the next 3 months are not actually going to be necessarily going through the community. The way that they set this up is we approve the budget with these different outline deliverables. They're going to do a lot of that in the background, so we won't actually see a lot of it happening. Now, if you go ahead and check GitHub and things like that, you'll be able to see some of the changes, but it's not like it's going to come to the community for a vote. Now, one thing that would come to the community is a governance for no canonical GitHub repo. So essentially removing it so there's not a single entity that has total control over the GitHub for the ecosystem, and instead this control would potentially be shifted over to the validators. Now, this is somewhat early conversations, but this is kind of an interesting idea if they're able to actually accomplish this. It does put a lot of responsibility on the validators to verify that this code is authentic, this code is correct, this code isn't going to break things, which might be an issue since a lot of validators lack technical skills. However, it also protects us against a single entity holding that GitHub repo hostage, because if they don't let other people make changes, then we can't progress forward. Now, something else that's really important for us to understand as we go forward here is that there's going to be a shift in how things are handled with the community. This is something I've been talking with Zaradar about because I'm trying to get information to give to you guys. And instead of doing the consistent joining in AMAs, joining in podcasts, all these different things. And by the way, Zaradar is actually going to be joining the Crypto Bros podcast tomorrow, so be sure to check that out. But instead of doing that on a regular basis, instead what they're going to do is probably about every month, they're going to come on and do those kind of things. And they're going to have a scheduled time where 1 hour a day where a bunch of different influencers, a bunch of different key opinion leaders in the community can go in and ask questions about progress, ask questions about different things. And that's it. It's not going to be consistent back and forth with people. They really want to take an approach of most of the time, 95% of the time, hands off from the community. Let the community do their own thing, work in the background. And then that 5% or 10% of the time, they would join in on things like podcasts once a month or conversations, AMAs. And then every so often, they're going to have a consistent time where people can go in and ask questions and not get spammed with a bunch of repetitive questions, but instead go to a couple people who can then just spread that information out to the masses. This might be something that's difficult for the community to become accustomed to, since we really want to have the interaction and involvement with these different people. I see a lot of people demand them or ask them to get onto AMAs for hours at a time, ask them for me, for example, to join in on podcasts. And so it might be difficult for us to not have that connection as much, the community not being able to interact with them on Twitter, on Discord. But at the end of the day, this is probably for the best. Instead of them spending hours every single day interacting with the community, answering questions multiple times. It sounds like Zaradar, for example, is having to answer some questions 20, 30, 40 times because he's answering individual people one at a time in DMs or in direct questions on Discord, and it's just not efficient. It's also important for us to think about the future funding and how we're going to accomplish this. Zaradar has made it very clear that this team is working way under their fair market value, the value that they could get somewhere else. They're working essentially at a discounted price for the community because they want to support us. But as they look towards the future, once they do provide value for the community, they want to get paid their appropriate compensation. So it sounds like we can expect in 6 months maybe for them to double or maybe even triple the compensation, because that's roughly what fair market value is for these different people. As I mentioned, for example, we're having a group of people that are working on the side. We have some people that are getting trained as well. There's a lot of different people involved here. And once more people shift to full-time work and those full-time people want to get compensated fully, for example, with Zaradar, he's talking about wanting twice as much as what he's currently being paid. And so if we value his work and we say, yes, your work is valuable, we want to keep you, we need to be prepared to be spending 2 to 3 times what the current budgeted amounts are. And so we need to start pursuing and looking at funding alternatives for this L1 team, as well as other alternatives. There are definitely projects that want to develop layer 2 applications, but maybe they need $10,000 to help get it kickstarted and fund some development. Right now, we couldn't afford to do very many of those at all. And so it's important for us to think towards the future here of how we're going to fund this L1 team when they want their full compensation. And as in addition to that, how are we going to fund some L2 development? These are some important questions for us to think about. And if you guys got value out of this video, be sure to check out this video up here, and I'll catch you all in the next one.